And like I said earlier, Nick Potter is going to present the one I'm supposed to present. So go ahead.
Okay, hi. So my name is Katherine Hegewisch, and today I'm going to talk to you about some decision support tools that we are in the process of developing for wheat and grain farmers in the Pacific Northwest, specifically to control pests, weeds, and pathogens with the goal of maximizing yield. And these tools are supported by the Regional Approaches to Climate Change project at the University of Idaho. And our team for this project consists of myself and John Abatzoglou, Eric Seaman at Flathers, Paul Gessler, Sanford Eigenbrod, and Edward Bichinsky, all at the University of Idaho. So in developing decision support tools here, we first look at the farmer's decision calendar for winter wheat specifically. And winter wheat is a winter annual, so the farmer has to reseed each year. And in the Palouse, wheat is also a rain-fed crop, so there's no irrigation. So the farmer has basically four major decisions to make. In the fall, they need to decide when to plant seed and how much to fertilize. And then in the spring, they need to decide how much they're going to fertilize and if they're going to apply herbicides or fungicides or insecticides. And then lastly, they need to decide when they're going to harvest the wheat. And in each of these decisions depends on at what stage the wheat is in over the growing season, and that depends on the weather variations each year. So for wheat, in the fall, it's planted and it develops into a small plant. And then in the winter, it goes through a dormancy period where sometimes the wheat can die off. And then in the spring, it starts growing again, developing into a plant and growing and developing seed. And then in the summer, it dries out. And each of the farmer's decisions also depends on how bad the wheat is disturbed each year by things such as competition from weeds, destruction from fungal pathogens like root and crown rot, or destruction from pests foraging. And each of these things also depends on the weather variations each year. So what can we do to help farmers make decisions which are essentially dependent on the weather variations each year? Well, at the U of I, we're producing some climate data sets that should be useful. First, we have the GridMet meteorological data set, which is historical back to 1979 and is real-time up to 1 to 2 days lag. We also are currently producing seasonal climate forecasts from the North American Multimodal Ensemble project. And for this, we're downscaling these forecasts and we're producing daily data for the next 7 months. Forecasts. And then lastly, we have future climate projections from the downscaling of CMIP5 using the MACA method. And all three of these data sets are complementary in that they use the same training data set and they're on the same 4-kilometer grid. And with the three of these, we should be able to make some short-term and long-term decision-making tools. Also at the U of I, we have the REACCH project, which is a multi-university collaboration in which lots of researchers are developing models connecting weather and crops such as wheat and barley and other things that influence them like weeds, pests, and different pathogens. And lastly, at the U of I, for the last year, we've been developing a visualization tool on the web called Climate Engine. And this web tool utilizes data sets that are on the Google Cloud and the processing power of the Google Earth Engine, and also the programming expertise at the U of I and the Desert Research Institute to combine to a web tool that provides visualization of data sets through maps and time series, where I show here at the bottom 2 screenshots of our current interface. And as a plug for Climate Engine, Donnie Van Zandt is going to be showing this off at the Tools Cafe at 5 p.m. today, so if you're interested, you should come and check it out. So combining the data sets, the Climate Engine tool, and the knowledge, we now have a working growing degree day tool in which the user can select a crop, can select a start date, and a location on a map, and can get a visualization of the cumulative growing degree days over up until the current time as the red line. That's what it is. And then we also show different percentiles from the historical data set so that the values can be put in context with respect to the historical. And we have some preset values for phenology ranges for different GDD stages for the different crops. So here I'm showing flowering stage. And so that's kind of where. And this leads up to our first decision support tool. And these tools are meant to be simple tools. So this one is for harvest date, and we want to basically determine when the wheat seed is mature. So the user comes to this tool at a certain date. I have it there as the gray line, like May 1st. And up until that point, we use the cumulative GDD from the GridMet data. And then after that point, we project using these daily NMME forecasts. And that gives a projection. And then to determine when the wheat seed is mature, we're going to take the end of the flowering stage for that. And so then we can intersect the red curve with the end of the flowering stage and get a date, and we can provide a summary for the user, which is that what is normal for the harvest date, what is the projected, and how many days early or late we expect that to be. A second decision support tool is to determine when to apply herbicides to combat downy brome or cheatgrass. And so a lot of the herbicides recommend that this be applied like during the 3-leaf stage before the production of seed for cheatgrass. So we can overlay that onto the similar GDD construction, and we can get a range in time that we project. That would be a good time to spray the herbicides and what is normal, and also say something about like how far ahead or behind that is. And then lastly, my third decision support tool has to do with pests. And here we can, the farmer can maybe alter the planting date or use this in their decision of when to plant to try to minimize the effect of wheat midge damage on the winter wheat. So the wheat midge is this little guy in the left upper corner here, and when it's an adult and it's flying, it flies into the open flowers of the wheat and it lays its eggs, and the larvae then feed on the wheat kernels and cause the kernels to degrade a little bit and reduce the eventual crop yield. So if we can adjust the planting date a little bit so that the wheat midge is not flying the wheat is not flowering when the wheat midge is flying, then maybe we can minimize the effects of the wheat midge pest. So here we can use that same GDD curve model, but for wheat midge first, and get a range of when the wheat midge is in flight. And then the user can toggle the planting date and try to get the flowering of the wheat to not intersect the wheat midge flight. And that then would give information on maybe how to minimize the effects of this guy. And then, so with the power of Climate Engine, we can do more than just GDD tools. We can also look at metrics that are related to precipitation or evapotranspiration or some other things too. So these are just some of our future plans, look at temperature risk and irrigation demand. But that's gonna be my part of the talk. And hopefully that was not the full time.
You have 2 minutes for questions.
So let's let Nick go first, and then we'll have him take questions together.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Hi, so my name is Nicholas Potter. I'm a researcher at Washington State University, and I work with the Center for Sustaining Ag and Natural Resources. And for the past few months, we've been working on a sort of a tool using similar data, a lot of the same data, to look at analogs for growing conditions in different locations. So the objective of the tool is to kind of leverage this high resolution climate and weather data that we have to create an online learning tool. And there's kind of two use cases that we envision. The first one is a kind of short-term use case in which the users might want to see for a specific year what the growing conditions have been like, and weather forecasts that are going to look at what the growing conditions will be like for the sort of short-term future. And that will also include looking at the historical records for a given location and finding years in the past that are most analogous to the year that the reference year. The second kind of use case is looking at it more from a kind of climate change perspective, where what the user is interested in is looking at a given location and wanting to know in the future, for the future projections, how are what other locations are similar to the future projections for a certain location historically. So the tool is kind of in early development. It's just a prototype right now, but this is kind of the starting page when you first visit it. And here we've got 400 latitude, longitude points that the user can click on one of these points. And the application will draw up the historical climate data, short-term and longer-term seasonal forecasts, also crops grown in the area, and NAS quick-stats data for the county that the latitude-longitude point is in. And then the app generates a plot kind of similar to the GDD plot that Katherine was talking about. And here you can see we've got a present year, we've got historical years there in orange, a present year that goes, in this sort of case, we've set the sort of current date to the beginning of September. So, and so then we've got the forecast that goes from there in a sort of dashed line with a range. I'm not sure if you can see, there's a bit of a cloud that kind of follows the forecast there. And you can see we've marked 1992. That's the sort of darker blue line, and that's because 1992 has the GDD accumulation that is most similar. It's the most analogous to the reference year there. And then we plot just to kind of give a sort of reference of how do the years that are most analogous, how did they do historically in terms of their yield. So we've got two plots on the right. One of which is sort of a time series where you can see the yields for the selected crop throughout time, and the sort of 5 most analogous years to the reference year are highlighted there in orange. And then the second plot is a kind of almost like a correlation plot where you've got yield and similarity. So you can see most similar years are kind of clustered down in that bottom left quadrant. This is a similar sort of plot mechanism for precipitation, so much of the same dynamic there. And this is actually from the PILES project, but it's something that we would like to incorporate. We want users to be able to go in, and if they're looking at a specific year, to be able to add their own notes. So 2015 was a very exceptional year. We had really low snowmelt, and then other users will be able to draw on those notes that sort of accumulate over time. So you'll be able to have not just a sort of analog and data perspective, but also some kind of commentary. So that's kind of the short-term use case. The longer-term use case is more, what we envision is more from a sort of climate change perspective. So here the user has selected a location, and what we've done is created a similarity matrix for the future years at that location compared to the historical years of all the other locations in our model. And so comparing 2035 to the historical years, we've drawn out some of the most similar locations there. They're highlighted as yellow squares. And you can see that they've kind of shifted south and to the east. And then by 2085, the most analogous locations are not in the kind of southeast corner of Washington, but now they're down sort of like one of those. That's actually Salt Lake down there in the very bottom. So it is not always the case that it shifts south and east. And so we've got this example where you can see in 2035 the locations are a little bit shifted south and west. And by 2085, they've almost reached the coast down there in Oregon. And one of the things that we're sort of hoping that this view can be used for is to give ag professionals a sense of, for this given location, given the future projections that we have, what are the locations that historically have been most similar to those future projections, and what are they doing in those locations to adjust for conditions there. So how are they accommodating things, what methods are they using, and also what crops are they growing there, and are those crops that the selected location may be shifting into as the climate continues to change. So just to kind of wrap it up, producers have relied on, they kind of have this built-in accumulation of knowledge, and we're hoping that the view of the climate data as analog can kind of be helpful in supplementing that. I think next steps with the tool are really to work on making it a lot more. Right now you can select a location and you get to view these plots, and you can also select the specific crop and the historical year range you want to use, and all that kind of stuff that you can see at the Tools Cafe if you come check it out. But we have a lot more to do there, and some UI improvements and stuff like that. And we'd also kind of like to continue to extend it, so we want to look at how can we work interactively with some of the other tools. How can we build in some of the crop model results and incorporate some other non-climate factors like soil type in the calculations of different analogs. Yeah, so we'll be there this evening. That's my email, so feel free to send me an email if you like. And we hope to see you tonight.
So we'll have both Catherine and Nick up here to answer questions at this point. So questions?
Yeah, thanks both of you for your presentation. What kind of feedback have you been getting from user groups? Have you started to kind of know with user groups and just interested in what they think of it?
Well, for us, we're in the right. We're still in the very early stages, so I think that we haven't begun the user group feedback yet. Yeah.
And I would say the same is true for us. Our tool is not quite completely working either. So
I will say this, we committed them both to present at Far West Agribusiness Association in about a month, so they better be ready.
So we'll get some feedback then. And maybe at the Tools Cafe, you guys will get some feedback if you guys join and check out their tool.
What do you expect the biggest barrier to be when communicating these tools to users?
For me, I think what I expect one of the biggest barriers to be is just with anything new, there's that barrier of not only like how do I use it, but what's the point in using it? And if it takes a lot of time to sort of figure out how to use it and make it actually be useful, then people aren't going to use it. So I think we're sort of in the process of like putting all the data together, trying to get some analysis up. But there's going to come a time when we have to sort of revisit the app to make it as easy and simple to use as possible, and also as useful, because if it doesn't have utility, then it won't get used.
Right, and I think the same is true for ours. Is maybe users understanding the results or understanding what they're seeing and understanding a correct version of what they're seeing too. So, yeah, that's what I think.
We saw in some of the earlier presentations of random severe events in atmospheric pressure to be of different sizes, kind of random as they approach us. Trying to match something with random and severe in the average model, is that challenging?
So the question was, we've seen a lot about how the random severe events are going to become more prevalent, and what are some of the difficulties in terms of trying to work these average modeling tools together with some of the random extreme events?
Yeah, so for our tools, we have growing degree day models that are a progression over the season. So of the heat energy that the crops or the disturbances experience. So even if there are random fluctuations, I still think the model is a model of the crop under those fluctuations. So I don't know if it's not really an average model necessarily.
Yeah, I would sort of echo
Right.
that to the extent that if there is a severe event, then it's gonna show up in that data
It's
as
going
soon
to show
as
up in the data.
it kind of gets
Right.
loaded.
It's a weather variation,
It's right.
basically.
But it is, of course, very difficult to predict the sort of random extreme events. So, the forecasts are kind of they're an ensemble of models over time, and they aren't going to
That's right.
pick up on a sort of large event like that in the short term.
And the forecasts have their own problems also because they have varying levels of skill. And so just like with any kind of forecast, if you have a 7-day forecast, we can kind of trust it. But if we go out to 7 months or 1 month, these models don't have all that much skill. But we're going to try to yield as much as we can from it.